Okay, week number 5. I am still staying ahead of the curve. We did some reading. Let's see here. My sheet is right here. We did all the reading. We watched all the lectures. We participated in the discussion. Some of my submissions have been rated. As of right now, I think I'm in the A minus. The reason for not getting full 10 points, I guess I was a little too short with my answers because they were like kind of having those lines for, let's see here. I guess it wasn't. Let's see if I can open this worksheet. Here's what I submitted. Let's open it because I want to see it too. Yeah, I guess I should have expanded my answers a little bit longer, and that's what I did with my other one. But yeah, it was kind of like, hey, here's the answer, and here's the question and the short answer. So that is not good enough. We adjust it, and we'll do better next time, which we already did. I had longer responses on my last one. So I'm still pretty happy with that grade, but we do have an exam coming up, and it's going to be a midterm exam. Week number 5, we're going to be talking about Through the Wilderness, Module 5 reading, which I already did. Book of Deuteronomy is finished. Yesterday, Today, and Forever, Chapter 4, we read. The Messiah, I'm actually ahead of the schedule on Messiah, on the book of Messiah, because I'm gonna have to write a book review, and I dread that a little bit. I can talk forever, but I cannot write. So I dread that a little bit. Then we're going to do a midterm exam next week. There's a study guide. We're going to still watch some lectures, and then we're going to do discussions. Hopefully I can do that on Sunday before the start of the week. And here's a guide for, it's only 4 pages. Okay. Language of Septuagint, or I don't, Septuagint in Russian, Septuagint. It's a Greek version of Old Testament. 2 Timothy 3:16, Greek word for God breathed. I'll have to look that up. Let's just look at a few features about the Sea of Galilee, Dead Sea, and the Jordan River. Sea of Galilee is up north. The Jordan River connects the two. Dead Sea is one of the lowest spots on the planet, actually, and it's salty. And it's the reason why it's called Dead Sea. First, probably because there's no living creatures in the Dead Sea, but then it doesn't go anywhere. It just evaporates, and there are no rivers flowing out from the Dead Sea. It's the lowest spot, and everything. The Sea of Galilee runs into that through Jordan River. Know the Palestinian seasons. I don't think we talked about that yet, so it might be in this. Oh boy, syncretism. Actually, syncretism. I know what this is, and I have a lot to go through. Primarily, yeah. I think a lot of this stuff is for. Does it say midterm exam? Because I'm not going to be able to. We're not reading Joshua, Judges, and Ruth up until the very end of the class. Syncretism, we just talked about it. Syncretism is combining religions together, and the teacher was referring to the golden calf. In the Bible, we read how I think Aaron said, "Here are your gods. Get ready for celebration. We're going to celebrate the gods and the Lord." So they're combining the Lord that got them out of the land of Egypt with the gods that they created. It's called syncretism. Yom Suf, I have no idea what that means. 3 foods in the Passover. It's the leavened bread, bitter herbs, and matzah. And I need to look up what matzah is. Significance of prophecies for Reuben, Judah, and Joseph. Key theme word in Exodus. I don't know what the key word is for Exodus. Father and nephew of Abram. I mean, father was, I think, Torah or something with a T. And nephew was Lot. The 2/7 from Adam, meaning sons of God, angels in outside Old Testament outside of Genesis. JDP, I remember it's something. It's one of those things that probably learn and never use again. This abbreviation was one of them. So it's not just in schools. I think it's everywhere, right? We got to learn something that we're probably not going to use, but hey, it's going to be on the test. Yeah, midterm test. I think it says closed book, closed notes, closed Bible, 50 questions. I hope it's a multiple choice. I hope it's not something that I'm going to have to write and explain because I'm not very good on that. So if that happens, my A- would probably be, I don't know, C+. Yeah, this week is over. I'm happy that I'm staying ahead. I wanted to read, first I wanted to kind of touch base on a few things, right? So first I wanted to talk about the notes, then the book Messiah, Yesterday, Today, and Forever, what I read in the Bible, and kind of my, maybe something personal as well. As far as the notes, what I remember that, I'm not going to go through all the notes, but the ones I want to talk about is when we talked about the first terrorists. The first terrorists in Exodus, it talks about them in Exodus chapter 17. Let's go here and read about the terrorists real quick. The first terrorists in the Bible. It could be a good question. A good question for a trivia game or something like that. More of an advanced trivia, I guess. Because that's very interesting. I mean, what description of terrorists? The terrorists are the ones that don't fight with who they should be fighting, right? Military and military, but the terrorists go after civilians. Actually, let's look up the definition of the word terrorist. Terrorist definition. I probably misspelled it. Criminal acts including against civilians committed with intent to cause death and serious bodily injury, hostages, taking hostages, and stuff like that. So it's against civilians. That's the main point. And we were talking about the Amalekites. I'm not talking about reading about Amalekites that were attacking Israel from the back. So all the slower people, right? All the elderly people, the kids. They were attacking them from the back, and it talks about how Amalekites were always perpetual enemies of Israel. They're descendants of Esau. They were always attacking Israel. They were joining Israel's enemies. They were fighting with Saul and David were fighting them, and the last Amalekite was Haman. And we read that in Esther. There are no Amalekites anymore. They're all gone. They're all killed. Just as I believe God promised that there would be no Amalekite. I can't find a reference, but I think God was talking about them. We also talk about the 2 tablets of the law. And the idea was, there was an interesting idea, how I always pictured, and it's only an idea as well. It's it's something that makes you think, right? I always picture that as two stone tablets, as 2 tablets with 5 laws, 5 commandments on each one of them. The idea here was proposed that it could have been 2 tablets with 10 commandments on each, just like a copy, right? So if we, like in my example, when we write contracts, usually have 1 copy for one party, the other one for another party. So there are contracts. It's at least 2 parties. when you do tax returns today. I had a person that turned in their tax returns, and they gave one copy to IRS, and then they had a copy for themselves with a stamp on it. So the idea was of having two stone tablets that had 10 commandments. Each tablet had 10 commandments, and one tablet went in the ark, and the other one was, I don't remember exactly what they were talking about, for reference for the Israelites. So one was as an example for Israelites to see. The other copy was inside the ark. Let's see here. One classified for, let's see, a classification of the laws. Exodus was a lot of reading about moral laws, civil laws, ceremonial laws. It's a little harder to read. Maybe not as exciting as Joshua. This is the book that I'm reading right now. There were two types of laws, and then what kind of caught my attention is, whenever we read that the law that, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, we'll always think that it is one of these laws like, well, if you did something like that, then this gotta happen to you. Like, if you knock somebody's tooth out, we gotta knock your tooth out. It's like kind of a little barbaric in a sense. That's how I always picture that. But in this case, it actually limits the punishment of the repaying party, right? So the punishment fits the crime. If somebody knocked your tooth out, you can't kill the guy, right? The most that you can do is take his tooth out. If somebody poke your eye out, it could be accidentally or in a fight, you can't just justify your murder of that person because he did that to you. It was a limitation of your, not wrath, because wrath is more on the higher level, like your payback. If somebody did this to you, you couldn't repay him back this much. So that was interesting. And then we talked about the tabernacle, syncretism, right here. Yep. One of the dirtiest words in the Hebrew history. There are your gods. So Exodus 32. If we quote, there are your gods, Aaron was saying. And then he said shortly after that, tomorrow will be festival to the Lord. So combining worship of Yahweh with other gods, syncretism. That is it for the notes. We'll see if this episode is going to be a little bit shorter. I don't know. I feel like it. I think I'm kind of letting go of all information because I felt like I had to explain every single note. So whatever I saw that I needed to read that. Now I'm going a little bit faster to make it more interesting. And like I said, we don't need to get into all the details. The Messiah book. Actually, when I started this book, was a lot of theology in this, and then as you come towards the end of the book, it's more of a historical context, which is interesting to read. It's anything that is connected to Jesus. In the Old Testament, it was a lot of theology, and then now, since we're in the New Testament, it kind of talks about the historical facts. Last time we talked about Pharisees, Sadducees, Zealots, and Essenes, or the word that I couldn't pronounce. But that was interesting, and I think it's important to understand the context of that time. This time, I was talking about the birth of Jesus, right? And I just wanted to touch base on the interesting part, right? There's a lot of interesting stuff, but I can't read all of it. I chose one place in the book that was talking about Magi's, right? The Magi's that came to Jesus to worship him. And I highlighted some stuff, and I'm just going to read that. No number of Magi's. It talks about the circumstances around Magi's and some of our incorrect assumptions around that time. No number of Magi's is mentioned by Matthew, but the fact that they presented 3 different types of gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, probably gave rise to the traditional number of 3 visitors. And I remember when I was growing up, and when we did Christmas plays, there were always three Magi's, the wise people. And I think now it's kind of not as prevalent. The later Christmas plays, I don't think portray three Magi's. I think the last one I've been to was four. So three is not, I mean, it doesn't really matter, but it's just one of those interesting things that we could think about. Also, they're not called kings, but Magi, a special caste of religious men in Persia, which we will examine later. They talk about later. Daniel was a part of that special caste in the Persia, and they were like the wise men, right? And it talks about that probably that group of people are the ones that came and worshiped Jesus. First, we read in Matthew 2:1. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, the wise men from the east came to Jerusalem. And going into the house, they saw the child, not stable or a cave. Right? So a lot of times we see the play where it shows that Jesus was still in the manger. And says here in Matthew 2:11 that they went into the house. So at that time, Jesus was probably a little bit older than the baby. And it's not like we should bash on the Christmas plays that don't portray the story incorrectly. I think it's more of an artistic approach. And I personally don't have any issues. Let's say if there were three wise men, if Jesus was in the manger. But if you're trying to go on a deeper level, that's kind of interesting. Trivia, same thing. Trivia, right? Where did the wise men find Jesus when they came and visited him? A lot of people will probably answer in the manger. And here we read that it was in the house. One of the interesting programs that if you want to use for, I called it earlier, for trivia, right? For big gatherings, is CrowdPurr. I saw that game implemented. Well, it wasn't implemented, but Alex Arkov was the first one. Well, the guy that I saw the game from, he ran the game, and I actually ran it a few times, and it always was a highlight of the evening. We ran it once at a wedding. It was a hit because you could have up to 100 people. And then whenever we went with couples, right, like bigger vacation trips, we would do that, and it was actually it's actually a pretty cool program where you can build your questions, and then everybody answers on their phones, and there's a timer. That would probably be a good question for that. Jesus could have been as much as 2 years old, since Herod ordered all the boys for 2 and under to be killed. Here's an interesting point. While the Magi may have engaged in some form of astrology, it is difficult to comprehend how God would communicate his will through a means that he had so strongly condemned in passages in Deuteronomy and Isaiah. I was talking about astrology, right? So we picture a star, and I think in the Bible, but it says in Matthew 2:2, it references to his star. And actually, another resource that I've been using a lot, and this is actually really good. We all have different translations, right? I use ESV for English translation, and when I was growing up, I was reading Synodal translation. I think that's how it's pronounced in English, Synodalny перевод. But with Step Bible, it uses the language for the Old Testament, Hebrew for the Old, Greek for the New Testament, and it actually gives you the meanings of words. So if we go to Matthew 2:2, it says, saying, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star. Let's click on that. And the literal translation is star. It occurs 24 times. A star, a luminous body, like a star, a luminary. The topic that it talks about here is how it's a little bit difficult to interpret what kind of star it was. I mean, are we picturing like the star in heaven like an astrology way? or was it something that was out of ordinary? And it's kind of hard to explain and to propose an idea of what it was exactly. I don't think they give an explanation here. They just say that if we allow for such a method of divine communication, stars, how can we condemn the utilization of astrology for fortune telling today, right? Horoscopes. If it was a star like that, how can we condemn horoscopes? And we know that we as Christians can use horoscopes. But the idea was like, hey, more point out, like, make you start thinking about stuff. And here's also proposed that it might have been a comet, but although the explanation has satisfied many sincere students of the word, it does not explain the fact that the Magi referred to his star. It is difficult to comprehend how such an astronomical phenomenon could have moved to Bethlehem and how it went before them until it came to the rest over the place where the child was, right? Was it just them that saw that? Was it a light? The star, right? If it's up in the sky, how was it pointing them to Bethlehem? And how did it start? The main thing that I wonder about, how did it show, let's see, it says to rest over the place where their child was. I could see how they could use a regular star for reference, but then how was it that it pointed them to the place where Jesus was? It's an interesting fact. It's definitely something that we shouldn't be fighting about. We should take those. We should think about those things. That it's just those little details. Okay, book of Yesterday, Today, and Forever. I read chapter 4, and I think the only one thing that, like I said, there's a lot of good stuff. Some of the stuff is pretty deep. Some of the stuff I am unable currently to, some of the stuff is difficult to comprehend, and even more so, it would be hard to explain. So in this case, I picked something that was simple, and it was the promise for two patriarchs. The one thing that I highlighted a few things on this page. I don't know if you can see that. It's too bright. I have an additional light so my face wouldn't be too dark. But let's see here. Genesis 21:7 brings us at last to the long-awaited moment. And incredibly, at the age of 100, Abraham becomes the father of a son born to Sarah, who is 90. Truly, Isaac, the son of laughter, is a special child. Defying the ordinary biological process, the Lord gives to Abraham a son whose conception was little short of supernatural. The question of Genesis 18:14, is anything too hard to the Lord, has been empathetically answered. The birth of Isaac previews things to come. In the future, a young virgin will conceive without a father. To her astonished question, how will this be? The answer comes back, nothing is impossible with God. It was kind of a thing where it connected Genesis 18:14. Is anything too hard to the Lord, for the Lord? And the connection in the New Testament that nothing is impossible to God. Because it was supernatural for Sarah, even though they have different timelines. They lived a little bit longer than us, but 90 back then was still old. So it was a supernatural birth, just like the birth in the New Testament. It was just interesting how it got connected. I think today is going to be my first time when I'm under or close to 30 minutes. I was reading Joshua. I think I've been trying to read about 10 chapters a day whenever I do, or at least 3, and then when I have time, closer to 10 chapters. And what I've been reading this time, I started with Joshua, and it's a very interesting book. It's a lot of stories, and what I kind of noticed is Joshua and the nation of Israel learning how to listen to God, how to refer to God before they do anything. And at first we read about Jericho, right? How God told him to what to do with Jericho. They did it exactly as God told them. The Jericho walls fell down. And then in Joshua 6, the last verse 27, it says, "So the Lord was with Joshua, and his fame was in all the land." Very uplifting moment for the nation of Israel. They just crossed the Jordan, right? The nation of Israel crossed a river or a body of water on the dry ground for the second time. The first time it was when the Red Sea parted, and then now they're crossing it over the Jordan to the Promised Land. So and before that, when I was reading Deuteronomy, I love Deuteronomy because it was like the battle cry before them stepping into the Promised Land. The summary of everything that they have learned and God's nastavlenia, which is, I don't know how to say it and put it together. I mean, what the word is for in English? Still learning this, but not God's provision, but basically God telling them what to do in a very lovingly way. And Joshua is trying to. So they crossed the what's that river? Sorry, I got distracted, and then all of a sudden I forgot what I was going to talk about. Jordan, right? They crossed Jordan, and then the very first thing they had to do is that fall of Jericho, and they listened to everything that God said. They did it exactly the same way, and then in the next chapter we see how. And I'm just going to tell you what I highlighted, what I've been noticing about the Israelites. Chapter 7, verse 3. "And they returned. Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is near Bethaven, east of Bethel, and said to them, 'Go up and spy out the land.' And the men went up and spied out Ai. And they returned to Joshua and said to him, 'Do not have all the people go up, but let about 2,000 or 3,000 men go up and attack.'" And then what happens next? We see how the people from Ai, let's see here, attacked. So Israelites attacked Ai, and people from Ai defeated the Israelites. And here we see Joshua saying, "Why have you brought us, this people, over the Jordan at all, to give us into the hands of the Amorites to destroy us? It would have been better, on the other side of the Jordan. Oh Lord, what can I say when Israel has turned their backs before their enemies? For the Canaanites and all the inhabitants of the land will hear of it and will surround us and cut off our name from the earth." They just defeated Jericho in one of the most spectacular ways, following God's each command. And then now after that, we see how they decided to continue on. They had that encouragement, like, oh, we can do this. And maybe they thought about, we're that good that we can do it on our own. And the interesting thing that I remember highlighting, that somebody would say, well, do not have all the people go up, but let about 2,000 or 3,000 men. We'll get it done. What do we read in... and I love what God says in verse 10. "The Lord said to Joshua, 'Get up. Why have you fallen on your face? Israel has sinned. They have transgressed my covenant that I commanded them. They've taken some of the devoted things.'" And we see how there was a guy that kept gold, and I think he a change of clothes, a beautiful cloak, and 20 shekels of silver against what God told them to do. They said, leave everything to destruction, and this guy just liked some stuff and decided to keep it. And if we read further, we'll find out what that ended up for him and his family. He was stoned, and then they burned him and his whole family and whatever he owned. And then we see how And later in chapter 8, God tells him to go against those people. And Joshua chose 30,000 mighty men of valor and sent them out by night. They had a little strategy this time. But what I loved and what I highlighted in this story is God saying in verse 8, "See, I have commended you." Sometimes we, and that was a reminder for me that we, when we see the will of God, we get inspired, we see stuff happening, and all of a sudden, sometimes at certain points of our life, we switch to this notion like, oh, maybe it's us, maybe it's our charisma, maybe it's our ability to do something, and then we start doing things of our own without consulting with God. And that's exactly what happened with the Israelites after that high of victory down to their defeat. And God telling them, get up, do what I tell you, and then, see, I have commanded you, and you won. And then later, let's see here, later we see how with Gibeonites' deception in chapter 9, they did not ask counsel from the Lord. They just accepted those people, the people that lived close to them, that God told the Israel nation to destroy everybody in Canaan, in the land of Canaan. These people were close. They were afraid of the Israelites, and they pretended they lived in a country far away. They wanted to establish a covenant with them. I don't know if covenant is a right word, but they wanted to get Israel's word that they're not going to destroy them, and they didn't get the counsel from the Lord. And what did that turn out to? That it was a mistake on their part, that they did the wrong thing without asking the Lord what to do in that specific case. And then I think let's see here, chapter 10. I think that was it. That's where I started. Chapter 10, 42, a summary. And Joshua captured all these kings and their land at one time, because the Lord God of Israel fought for Israel. It was just a reminder for me that a lot of times, even with good intentions, sometimes we can get to this level where we want to do something of our own. Maybe it's pride, maybe it's belief in our abilities, and sometimes we get that reality check from God. Well, get up. If you fell, get up, listen to what I'm going to say, inquire of me, and win those victories with the Lord. On the personal note, I think I just find myself, which that's kind of interesting. I don't think I ever cried when I read when I read the Bible, but I find myself sometimes get teary-eyed when I read about God's love for Israelites that translates into God's love for us. Just the certain situations that Israel was in and how God was rescuing them or showing love. I think that's what I've been noticing a lot lately. Just having that Word of God on a personal level really, when you start thinking about it, really affects you. And then one of the last songs that I also wanted to share, a song that I started listening to lately. Just found it recently, yesterday. I never listen to radio. K-Love is one of the Christian radio stations in Denver Metro. And then yesterday, I usually just hook up my iPhone and then listen to what I do, listen to on Spotify. And then yesterday, I had, for a brief moment, when I was talking to somebody on the phone, K-Love came on, and this was the song Red Collective lyrics. And I just remember when I heard the lyrics, I'm like, I gotta find what this song is because I've never heard it before. And this is the song. I'm a little bit weird. Whenever I like the song, I would like it, and I would listen to. I could listen to a song that I love that I just found out that I just found for like 10, 11 times in a row. I would like it. I would constantly listen to it. And this is one of these songs. And later, I mean, it's gonna pass. I mean, it's been 2 days. I probably listened to it 20 times. But I really like the words in the chorus. And 2 or 3 months ago, that was kind of my not thought process, but one of those moments that I was been thinking about a lot. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when they said, "God will save us, but even if," in this song, says the same. Even if my daylight never dawns, even if my breakthrough never comes, even if I'll fight to bring you praise, even if my dreams fall to the ground, even if I'm lost, I know I'm found, even if my heart will somehow say, even if my heart will somehow say, hallelujah anyway.